A welcome to those in New Zealand, kia ora, and also to those in Australia, and recognise the traditional custodians of the lands on which we work, live and learn today. And in my location, they are the Yagara and Turrbal peoples. And so I'd also like to extend my welcome to the cultural diversity that exists in this classroom, as we may also have stakeholders from other parts of the Asia region. Today we have, I'm getting buzzers on LinkedIn. That excites me. The other reason LinkedIn's really good is that if you ever have a quick question for me, LinkedIn's a good place to put it in the chat, because I check it when I'm putting my son to bed, and much to his distaste, I say, well, it's time for you to sleep. Mummy's just following up from the day. And so that's when I get to my LinkedIn checking in. And so I do look there. I would love to welcome, though, the lovely Jane Tweedy. You can probably see there. Jane is a 1221 thinker. You're very welcome to change your profile name if you would like to, like Jane has, and I will in a moment, to share with us your preference code as well. And Jane is the founder and lead trainer of FAQ Business Training, as well as a Herman Certified Practitioner. I'm going to read her a little blurb that she shared. She has experience in business coaching, strategy, marketing, process improvement, and helps business owners build practical skills for growth. And she got in touch with me after some of our forums and said, I want to share what I'm doing. And I said, wow, I don't need to hear this. A lot of people need to hear this, because there's lots of people out there doing some really impactful work with incorporating AI ethically into their business processes and how they're working. That keyword ethically is something we might cover today too. So she's very passionate about empowering others to think differently, smarter, and adapt to change. And she uses whole brain thinking as well as other frameworks, which she will talk about in that process, to obtain meaningful results. So I'm going to hand over to Jane, put myself on mute, and feel free to continue to comment in the chats there as we go through, and I'll come back on at the end. Thanks, Jane.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll just wait for my screen to come up, which will hopefully be in a sec. It's been very slow. Oh no, Zoom quit.
It's there. We can hear you. We can see you.
Oh, it said Zoom quit. That's very weird. Okay, let's not quit. I'm here. Well, thanks for coming along today. Let's get going. We're going to talk about how whole brain thinking meets AI. Okay, so that's our topic for today. And it's to boost your thinking and creativity, but within boundaries. So as Rosie just said, it's really about understanding that we want to use it ethically and not just use it for the sake of using it. I also want to acknowledge country. I'm actually from New Zealand. I grew up in Wellington, spent most of my life in Wellington, moved to Sydney. So I am currently in the Darug people of the Penrith area. The information today is generic in nature, may or may not apply to you. I can make slides and handouts available to you. You'll get one handout during the session. And I would suggest watching it in potentially high quality, because some of the screens might have a little bit of detail in them that you might want to see, or at least when you're watching the replay, watch it in high quality. It's probably more important. Okay, so the introduction. What are we covering today? We just want to talk about the impact of AI on thinking and how whole brain thinking works with that or against that, as the case may be. And we're going to talk about priming and frameworks, because if you don't set up your AI tools effectively, you won't use them effectively. Garbage in, garbage out. We're going to talk about some limitations and the future of AI. And we're also going to talk about creative uses and things. Now, we're going to get you guys to do some things later. We're going to have a bit of a breakout. So I'm going to have about 20 minutes talking to you, and then we're going to have a 15-minute breakout and about 15 minutes back to the group, and then we'll wrap up. So we've already introduced myself. So the first thing I just want to cover is that change is absolutely inevitable. When I was a kid, I remember being told that the only things certain in life were death and taxes. Okay, that was the two things. I argue there is definitely a third, and that third one is change. Change is going to happen whether we like it or not, and it's how we react to change that obviously makes a massive difference. So what we want to always do is be able to plan ahead, but allow for flexibility. Because if we're so rigid in what we're going to do in the future, we're not going to be able to adapt to change. So I like to personally think of AI as being the car and the horse and cart carriage. So what I want you guys to do is just in the chat, say, where are you at with AI? Love it, like it, cautious of it, hate it. So like, love, cautious, or hate. So got a few lovers in here, lovers. Because I know when we did this session last time, and this is actually how we came to have a chat about this, is that I'd actually just made a comment in the chat, like you guys are doing right now. And that's where this actually came from, because Rosie saw my comment and thought, oh, let's explore this a bit further. Okay, so it looks like most are love and like and courteous. I like that. Cautious, a few cautious. Okay, so it's a bit of a mix of like, and cautious, and no hates. So that's interesting, because there's usually a few people that absolutely really, really hate it with a passion. But we need to remember this, that in the era of the horse and cart, right, when the car came along, it was going to make the blacksmiths and things redundant. It was going to take away a whole bunch of jobs for a whole industry of people. Okay. But that was going to create a new industry, the car industry. So there were some good and bad things. But also remember, at the time, the car is such a great thing when you think about it. It kills people. It's fast. It's dangerous. It pollutes. There's a lot of negatives about a car. But yet, can you imagine our world today without a car? Hell no, right? A car is part of our everyday lives. So this is why I like to use this analogy. You've got to think of AI as the car in the horse and cart race, okay? So it has to be something we now have, okay? The industry and the roles will definitely evolve, but it's not going away. So let's look at whole brain thinking and how we react to change as just your typical thinking style. Someone that's in the blue quadrant wants to understand how things work. So they really want to kind of get behind it. They want to know what the source of information is behind it. They're really fact and figure driven. The B side is the processes and the boundaries. They can be quite conservative and quite resistant to change. And also remember that when we look at our HBDI booklets, 18.63% of the population are that kind of blue-green. And that's where we start to have some issues, right? That there's a lot of people that are going to be quite resistant to change. Then we've got the feelings and relationships in the red quadrant. How is it going to impact people and their jobs? And then the yellow is typically a bit more curious. They're going to be a bit more willing to change, and they're going to look at possible outcomes. So obviously, depending on which type of profile you are, is going to probably impact how you think about change, including the change of AI. So jobs are definitely being impacted by AI. In a country like Australia or New Zealand, because we're so heavy reliant on computers and things, 60% of our jobs are already heavily impacted by AI. Now, obviously, in a third world country, not many computers and things, they're less impacted. But things like, oh,
I'm just going to pause there, Jane.
Yeah, it just says double click.
Well, I can see them, but I'm a host. We can see the cover slide, but we're not clicking through slides.
Really? Oh, gosh.
Maybe
Okay, well, I'll stop share. That might have been something to do with that dropout before.
That Zoom quit. Try
Yes.
again.
Yeah, it's just said Zoom quit unexpectedly again. That's bizarre.
While you try that again, I was just commenting in the chat. I initially had a distrust of people who used AI. So but like we're talking 3 years ago when it first came out. If you were telling me, oh yeah, I used AI to design my session, straight away, my reaction was, oh, well, I don't trust you. And that's something that I've changed my perspective on. But I'd be curious in the room if there were other responses and reactions like that. When I think of my thinking preference, or we can see jobs impacted by AI now, Jane. Feel free to share in the chat if you've had, my journey to AI wasn't one where I was jumping on board with change and like, yeah, it's a new car, let's go straight away. That's not necessarily the way my thinking works. It's a slow burn approach in my thinking process. And so, yeah, feel free to share in the chat. Oh, it's really, Carrie's saying, I was told we don't use it here. in the last
Ooh.
contract. Awesome. Yeah. So feel free to add these comments to the chat. Jane, are you okay? So I just,
Yeah.
you good?
Should be good to go, and you can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah,
you.
cool.
We can see the Winnie change. So
Right. Sorry about that, guys. Let's try and hopefully that doesn't happen again. So that was what I was going through on the whole brain screen that you clearly couldn't see before. So I do apologize for that. But obviously you guys are familiar with the areas and what we're looking at. So jobs being impacted by AI, it's not just the jobs you think of as the most obvious. Even things like surgeons are being impacted by AI. So every job pretty much is being impacted. Maybe the only ones that really aren't too much are things like plumbers and contractors, which is an interesting thing to kind of consider, that maybe trades are the way to go if you don't like change. But AI is not going away. So this is a study that McKinsey put out in March 25, the state of AI. And what they're basically showing is how many people are now using AI in different departments. So as some of you said, being in certain corporates or universities and things, you may have rules and restrictions. But I know already things like TAFE New South Wales are already running like sessions about AI and when it's appropriate to use AI and when it's not. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in a sec, about that impact on thinking. So some are definitely taking the lazy route. And this is where, for instance, in study, it becomes a problem because people are literally just going, here's all the information, dissect it, come up with a summary, give me the answers to these questions and spit it out, right? That is not showing any intelligence, any critical thinking on our behalf, okay? But those people will definitely eventually be caught out, because rubbish in is going to always equal rubbish out, like any system. So AI doesn't just automate tasks, it actually helps to automate our cognitive functions. And that's an interesting thing to consider. But it can also encourage us to approach situations differently and more easily potentially than we could before. So for me, my creativity is actually enhanced and my thinking is enhanced with AI, not dumbed down, which I've definitely seen it the other way. So the future of AI, its limitations and its reservations, there are genuine AI concerns, right? A lot of jobs are going to be lost. A lot of jobs that are done today simply won't be done in 5 years' time. Simple as that. We're going to have to evolve. And even us as human practitioners are going to find there are things that change. And I don't know if any of you have encountered this yet, but because I've fed into my ChatGPT about my Herman profile and things, my HBDI profile, what it keeps doing is spitting out HBDI responses to everything. And I have to tell it like, no, I don't need a whole brain thinking answer to that one. It just spits it out all the time. So the thing is, it actually really gets to know you well. And, you know, the general public isn't getting whole brain thinking stuff, but I am. But this is to remember, yes, your clients probably aren't getting that whole brain thinking stuff because, again, they're not putting that information in. They're not thinking like that. But if you're doing it a lot, you will find it starts to take over. But the point is then that obviously AI starts taking over from some of the stuff we're doing to help train people to use the tool effectively. So the ethics of AI, it enables stealing. Let's be honest. It's like giving people the key to people's back doors and things and saying, just go walk inside and grab it. We've got to decide how we handle that. Now, that's why I personally use AI more so for putting my information in and getting it to summarize my information. It's not putting in other people's information and summarizing that. So that's one way to think that you can go, okay, I can use this more effectively. Absolutely, jobs will be lost, but heaps of new jobs will be created. And honestly, you're not losing your job to AI. You're losing your job because you're not using AI. That really becomes the issue. So it really becomes a change of thinking. So it can dumb some people down 100% and make them more lazy. But we've got to remember we can still critically think, okay? There's the way that we start the prompts, the way that we start the discussions with AI come down to the way that we think, okay? So as we've already said, change is inevitable. It's going to keep evolving. In fact, I saw a stat last week that the amount of information in the AI tools is growing 33% a month. It's phenomenal, the amount of information that's going in there. It changes the way we search, but so did the internet. Who uses Google Maps or Waze for their map directions? Who would do this on a car? None of us, right? And imagine stopping in the middle of the Cahill Expressway or something equivalent and having to pull out a map to find directions, okay? It's just not an alternative. So it is very much testing the limits of privacy and cybersecurity. And the tools and change may be restricted and change at some point, but they're here to stay. But what we've also got to remember, don't use things straight out of the tools. Don't believe everything it says. Absolutely not, because it's just grabbing data from anywhere. We need to make sure that that's not just somebody's fictitious comment that was completely made up. And then also we can do things like running plagiarism and originality checks. But honestly, some of those have been shown to be quite useless. You can put something completely authentic and brand new in there and it says, oh, it's 80% AI. And you're going, I literally just wrote this. Because the trouble is, even our thinking we do now, a lot of it is formed from what we've gained from all the things we've gained over the years. You've got to think about that. You didn't just learn something, or you didn't just wake up as a baby and how my brain's full of all this information. No, you've absorbed it from places. And absolutely, we need to take a new role and position us in the process of thinking exponentially, thinking how can we exploit these tools in an ethical way to really make a difference to us and to the world. Now, I just want to cover briefly why I predominantly use ChatGPT. And so for those that don't know, it's called a generative pre-training transformer. It's not new artificial intelligence, it's been around a long time, but really the GPT side is fairly new, that we as the general public can use it, okay? And we can use these tools for almost anything. So it's a chat-based tool. It was released only in February 23, 2 years ago. And it's phenomenal how much it's changed in 2 years. There's already hundreds and thousands of tools and custom versions of ChatGPT released. So the problem is you can't compare all of them. Don't even try to. Instead, just go, ChatGPT works pretty well, and it's a really, really good one for remembering things. But let's look at why a lot of people go wrong. They use ChatGPT prompts and they make them very short. They go, I'm a Herman certified practitioner and I want to run a session for these people. And that's all you put in, okay? That's going to give you a rubbish generic answer because you gave rubbish. So we've got to be very clear about what we want the tool to do. So again, this is about that critical thinking and really setting it up properly. So priming is so important. So priming is about, and I'll give you the example. I treat prompts as if you were painting this wall, slap the paint on the wall, you're going to get a terrible looking finish, right? But if I first plaster that wall and give it a really nice finish, I'm going to get a really good result. So that plastering is what I call priming. I'm telling the system the information it needs to help me much more. The thing is, if we do that priming exercise, you're going to get much better results more quickly, much less corrections, much more unique answers straight out of the box without you needing to edit them. And you can teach it what you want rather than having to nag it every time and going, no, I told you not to do this. No, we tell it up front. So why particularly ChatGPT though? Even if you actually ask some of the other tools, if you ask Gemini, if you ask Copilot or Perplexity and say, hey, do you record the information I've given you to use in future chats and things? And it will say, no, I'm not very good at that. ChatGPT is the expert in this. And that's why I said, for instance, when I'm doing even a chat where I haven't primed the individual chat, I haven't told it background information in the chat, it still does the whole brain thinking thing because it's still referring to other chats and going, Jane likes whole brain thinking. I'm going to make sure I put the whole brain thinking approach in there. So it's by far the best to refer back to things. And it's great, therefore, for your own business use, your own training use, your own material use, all that sort of thing. And it gives you that consistency. And also it's really great on the free plan. So what is priming? Instead of just going, like the example I gave before, I'm a Herman practitioner, I'm presenting a workshop to these people. We say, based on what we've already input, give us this information. Tiny tweak to the prompt, but the tiny tweak is because we put this massive amount of priming information in there first. So what that means is that the better information in, better information out. Staying in that same chat particularly, so rather than moving into different chats, will really help that information to definitely stick in that chat. But eventually the chat gets too long. So once you hit that point and it's too long, you go, okay, cut it there, and we'll dump out of that and we'll start a new chat. So you're definitely going to be more personalized to you. So one thing, so if you don't like the painting example, if you've never painted and don't understand that, think of it like this. If you go to a friend or a coach or a counselor or a psychologist, if you go to a brand new person you've never met before and ask them a question, they're going to give you a very generic answer because they don't know you. If you ask that same question to somebody that already knows you, already has your background, already has your history, the response is going to be 10 times, 100 times better because they know you so well. And that is the benefit of priming it. So we've got to look at how do we prime it. If we're using it for a business purpose, then we provide information about the business, yours or the corporate or whatever you're working for, and information about you or key people in the organization. If it's for personal use, we provide background information for the use. And we can also do it for if we're reviewing something, we can obviously just put in the information that we want to review. What we want to do is store that priming in a separate document, and we update the priming in there. And that way, if we ever need to create a new chat, we can just literally copy and paste it into our new chat and we're ready to go. If you've got the paid version of chat though, you can use what's called projects, or you can even create custom GPTs. But projects are pretty easy. We can just upload that priming document, upload any framework we're using, ta-da, we get the answer. So, but like I said, the memory will eventually get confused. Like I said, you can later on, if you want to get some additional handouts for me, I'll give you stuff like this, how to do that priming exercise. But just to give you an idea, that's the type of thing we're putting in, like 20 questions. And it really then obviously gets to know us. So the best practicing for prompts and editing is to give it some background information first, ideally that whole business or you information, a framework for the particular task that we're going to do. And I'm going to give you a framework today for a thing called thought monitoring. And that's a really cool example of how to use chat a bit differently. And we're going to let ChatGPT know its role. Is it an expert? Is it a critic? Is it a friend? And we can also refer to the framework if we don't need to give it the framework. Like HBDI, whole brain thinking, I don't need to give it that. It knows it a lot about it already. And you can run a little test on that straight away right now by going into ChatGPT and just saying, what do you know about whole brain thinking? And you'll find it knows a whole lot about it already, okay? And we can also use certain things like having quotes for things that it must include. Just remember too to break down requests into small chunks. So we can go, if we wanted to write a 2,000 word blog post, we don't say, chat, write me a 2,000 word blog post. We say, chat, I want to write this blog post, under these criteria. Can you please give me an outline for it? Then we ask it to write each piece by piece. So we don't do it all together. And we also don't do question stacking, which if you're a coach, which many of you probably are, we don't question stack. If I say, what did you have for lunch yesterday? What are you doing for dinner tomorrow? The person's going to go, which day did you want to know about dinner? Which day do you want to know about lunch? Not clever. So our best practices, I give you practices that I've got green for the information you can just copy, and red means that you need to put in your information. So turning a process into a framework. What is a framework? Oxford Languages suggest it's an essential supporting structure, or it's a basic structure underlying a system, concept, or text. Everything you do, every process you have can be turned into a framework. So something like, for instance, if you were doing marketing, you might have an ideal sales page format, a format that you've learned over the years, you've created, you put that in as a framework. What about the layout of a checklist? Always have an intro, sections, whatever you want to do, you set it up. So when we put these frameworks to ChatGPT, we want to do it either in a new chat or a new project. Prime it with your business information or the information you want to use about the scenario. Explain to chat the framework you want to use. So today we're going to use thought monitoring. And then we're going to prime it with anything needed for the purpose. Now, for today's chat, we're not going to need any business or personal information apart from the information about the specific situation that we're covering. So I won't go through that example. It's just an example of doing an introduction, so general business prompting. Before we just jump into the framework and then get you on your merry way to do your breakout, I just want to quickly highlight this issue. Because ChatGPT, if you're using it a lot, is going to get to know you super well. Like I said, it does with me with whole brain thinking. What I want it to do sometimes is to do what's called blue sky thinking or blue ocean strategy. And that is where we want it to not use our map of the world, not to use our thinking style. We want it to go out and think more broadly. So particularly if you're very green, you're a doer, but you're not very ideas, very yellow, then going out to Gemini or Copilot, where you're out in the big bad world, then that can be a really good thing to do. So for instance, if I am looking for new people to offer HBDI profiles to, for instance, I could go out to Gemini and I could say, can you please help me find out who might be interested in buying? In this case, it might be HBDI profiles, okay? And that's the only information we give it. So this is the exception to the rule. I be deliberately vague so that it gives me more information from its perspective rather than mine. Because I know who I think might like to use these profiles, but it might come up with a whole bunch of other ideas I'd never even considered. So this is a really good way of getting more information. So alternatively, rather than going out to the thing that you're doing, you can also go out to the audience and say, right, just tell me what you know about the needs of middle-aged women juggling business and family life. And just get it to tell you about that. You're not even telling it what you do or how you might help them. You're just trying to gather information. So it can be a very good way of gathering more information away from our thinking style, which is very, very cool. So the last thing I want to do before we set the framework is make sure you set your boundaries when you're using AI. Whether it's just you, whether it's a team, whether it's a business, decide when you're going to use it. When is it appropriate? When is it not? What human checking and intervention should you use to make sure, like how much human input at the start and how much at the end? How much healthy skepticism should you use? And what growth mindset would you use? So I want to talk about a framework, which is thought monitoring, which I think I've lost my book because I think my cat chucked it off the table somewhere. But there's a book called Change Your Thinking by Dr. Sarah Edelman. She's a Sydney psychologist. So hopefully some of you have heard of that book. I actually reached out to Sarah and asked her if I could use her thought monitoring framework. But I took it to the next level. I decided I'm not just going to use it. I'm going to use it as a tool that I can use in ChatGPT. And this came about because, for instance, I had a client who insists that her husband has to acknowledge when he does something wrong or says something wrong. And I'm sure some of you in the chat today, in this session today, can relate. You know, somebody says something wrong and you just want them to admit it and go, look, okay, yes, I fess up, I did it wrong, or that was the wrong thinking, here's the right way of doing it. The reality is a lot of people won't do that. That's just not who they are. So what we can use is thought monitoring to challenge what we're doing. So what I want you to do now is to grab, it's an absolutely great book, 100% recommend it. What I want you to do is to grab the little thought monitoring prompt sheet that I've given you. You can scroll down, you can have a read through the top bit later, but what you're effectively going to do is to put in the red, you can just change those reds to some words. Now, what I want you to do, for those who said you love AI, I want you to challenge it to basically give you the alternative. So you say, but either way, you say, my current thinking may or may not be right, but either way it is making me, and you could say frustrated. We'll say it's unhappy or frustrated. We're going to leave that as that. So what you're going to do is copy this entire green prompt all the way down to that blue bit. Copy that. Go into your ChatGPT as a new chat. Show you that. So to go into ChatGPT as a new chat. And I'm just going to copy then that entire prompt there with that little bit changed. So I'm just going to say, it's making me unhappy and frustrated. And in this case, I'm going to say about people who think AI is terrible. Okay, that's what I'm going to say later. So I'm just going to put that in. And you'll see it, I've told it, you don't need to do anything yet. I'm just going to put the information in. And then I'm going to continue with the second prompt. And as you'll see, the second prompt is very, very long, because what it actually is the thinking errors that this framework is challenging. Okay, so I'm going to go to my chat and I'm going to put that in. Okay, and we put all that in. Yes, I understand the 14 thinking errors that I've put in, and it's given me a little bit of summary, but I can just ignore that for now. Now I'm going to go into the next bit, and I'm going to give it the thought monitoring framework. Okay, so it's telling it exactly what we're doing. And remember, this process you can apply to any process that you do in your business, in your personal life, whatever, you can do the same thing. So anything that can be turned into a framework, we literally can do this. Now that we've set up the concept, this is what you're going to have to change in here. So what I suggest you're doing in this particular example is, rather than copy and pasting that block, is go into the red bit. So make sure you've made a copy or downloaded it. Go into the red bit and say, I'm so frustrated that people hate AI. What is wrong with them? AI is amazing. Okay, if you're a lover of AI. If you're a hater of AI or a dislike or very cautious about it, say, I hate why some people love it so much. Oh, you can't use OpenAI at work. Oh, that's a bit unfortunate. If you have it on your phone or something, can you use it on your phone? Otherwise, that's okay. The rest, you don't need to use this tool, but I just want some of you to have given this a go, because it's actually quite a cool tool to do. And then what you're going to do is put that in, and then you're going to start going, what thinking errors am I doing? So if I'm going to copy this in very quickly, running over time a little bit, sorry. So I'm going to say here how I feel, and I'm just going to say, I'm frustrated that some people are still very anti-AI and will even block people who use it for images or posting. Okay, so I'm just going to put something like that in there. So obviously the more detail I give, the better it might be, but you know, and I can put that in there. Now, for those that get my stuff, you can always get an example showing that example I mentioned before about the doing it wrong. So we're going to leave it out to that dash, 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 and then you're just going to hit enter. Don't worry if you've got a typo like I did about that, like that's not going to mean anything. So as you see there, based on what I've put in, it's already gone to the ABC thing. It's already gone, what is the activating event? It's already gone the beliefs and things. And it's already gone some consequences, okay? And then what you can do is just follow through. So if it hasn't done that, like what thinking errors, then I can just copy the next prompt. Oopsie. Copy the next prompt. And it's going to tell me which thinking errors I am using. Now, just the wording with thinking errors, by the way, doesn't mean your thinking is wrong. It just means your thinking is not serving you, okay? So that there is how you can do it. So what we're going to do now is go into before we go into very quickly, if we go into the chat, the breakout, just understand the impact of time savings. If you save 10 seconds 10 times a day, you save a day a year. If you save 10 minutes 10 times a week, for instance, in sending emails, etc., you save 2 weeks a year. That's a holiday, right? And if you can save 2 hours once a week, that's 2.5 weeks a year. The incredible thing with AI is it generates a lot of these type of savings, these big savings. So if you can just do a couple of things better, you've potentially saved yourself like 4 weeks a year, a whole month a year. just pretty incredible. So there's lots of things that AI can do. So what I want you guys to do, because it's gone a bit too far, sorry, we're going to do 10-minute breakout. So I want you in your breakout, I want you to explore the positive ways that AI can be used for you or your clients. I want you to also think about the boundaries that would help you to stay in control, to make sure you're not losing it and becoming unethical. And if you have put in that chat, that thought monitoring framework, I want you to see how well it does at arguing the other side of a debate and how you can get comfortable in actually putting that together. So I'm going to get you to do that, and then we're going to get you guys to report back. So Rosie and co are going to put you into some breakout rooms. So explore creative ways to use AI, the boundaries to stay in control, and that challenge. If you love it, what are the challenges on the other side so you can help people who don't understand it, and vice versa.
Thanks, Jane. I'm just checking. You should get an alert to move to a breakout. 10 minutes, and then we'll see you back here.
Okay, so what we'd like you to do now, if what you can do is actually share in the chat. So share in the chat some things that you came out of the discussion. So positive ideas of things that you found, also the boundaries or things that you think you want to make sure that you're employing. And also if anyone did that thought monitoring exercise of challenging your thinking, if anyone wants to come on and just have a quick little say about that, if you can just put your hand up or unmute or whatever, that would be great. So just put in the chat anything that you want to share, and then but if there's particularly that thought monitoring thing, if you can just share of what you came out of, that would be fantastic. Just if you can come on and speak. If anyone wants to speak. Yeah, and as Rosie just said in the chat, sometimes you want chat to be primed to know lots, and sometimes you don't. It makes sense to how to differentiate that. So yeah, just be careful. Even when you're using, say, a Gemini or a Microsoft or something like that, just remember, if you have something like Google Workspace, Google knows a lot about you. So you still want to start the open conversation by going, disregard anything you know about me, and then start the conversation with that really high level. Okay, so we've got some things coming through. Does anyone want to talk to their room? How many rooms did we have, Rosie?
5.
5. How about somebody from each room? So group room 1, can somebody share any key thing you learned, something that was a bit different that you didn't expect? Room 1, anyone?
I'm just going to throw Elaine in because I see she's put in the chat. Elaine, do you mind just sharing what you shared? And I'll just voluntold someone.
Oh, go. Yeah.
Thanks, Rosie. Yeah, we had a great conversation about, the reality of trying to get your head around this and start using it. And there were, quite a number of examples of how we're each at sort of different stages of that. I think the one thing for me that taking away from the conversation was, being clear about where it can add value. And certainly there's huge benefits in time saving, finding out information, research. For us all as facilitators, coaches, like, well, where do we add the value now? And I think we all agreed AI doesn't feel empathy. We can feel empathy, we can express empathy, we can show compassion, we can really focus on the application of that knowledge into different contexts. We can support. It's really important to challenge as well what's coming back, so we can help our participants, our coachees, to use human intellect to challenge some of that information. Others, please feel free to jump in.
Yep. What about group 2?
I'm going to chuck in Jason because he's a staff member, so hopefully he's paying attention. Hopefully, Jason.
Yep, don't worry, paying attention. We didn't manage to use the model, but we just reflected on how we were using it, and if who felt comfortable using it. And some of us were using it quite a lot and others not. We sort of looked at how the importance of looking at references. You know, if you are getting information off there, making sure that you are looking at the sources that you're getting it from to make sure, you know, you still have to validate the information that you're collecting. We talked about the importance of putting in the decent prompts as well, because if you put the wrong stuff in, you can create more work for yourself. But you can always look back and just ask more questions. And I have found myself a few times going down sort of rabbit holes by asking the wrong questions and just having to start all over again. But that might be user error on my part. I felt like overall we were quite positive and got a few sort of instant tips on what to do next with it. Sarah Wood, I'm quite keen to explore what you mentioned at the beginning. I can't remember if we covered that off or not. You were saying you're going to talk about your experience. And you're using it for creating successfully creating your presentations. It was really shortcutting your training sessions preparation.
Yeah, that one Gamma can be a really good tool for. But yeah, primarily, like I said, stick to one system because honestly, it just makes your life a bit easier. Might just wrap it up there, just simply because we're going to be out of time. So I just want to quickly just run through a last couple of things. So thank you so much for doing that, and definitely have a play with that thought monitoring framework. It's a really cool exercise to do, but we can use it for all sorts of things, like writing an email to staff. You know, I had this client that she was freaking out about sending a negative email, and she actually realized that she could simply chuck into ChatGPT literally that much information that's on that screen there, and it printed out the perfect email for her, and it completely removed her anxiety and anxiousness, which was absolutely fantastic. So just remember, it can be used for so many things, for so many good, but remember the limitations that we talked about earlier. And also remember, it may get it wrong. You've got to add in that human element and experience, and that for all data that you enter, it's now public knowledge. But let's face it, the data probably is already public knowledge anyway. So just don't forget that it's you've already got it. As soon as you put it in Google Drive or something, or Microsoft OneDrive, it's public knowledge really, because seriously, they have access to it. The other thing to remember is that ChatGPT can get to know you a little bit too well. If you add your things like your HPDI profile, it will start doing things like this is literally me asking it to give me some ideas for a topic for a heading on a course. And it literally broke them all out into the ABCD. And I was like, didn't ask for that. Did I need that? No, I didn't. So just remember it will do that a little bit. So just a summary, AI is here to stay. It really is. There's no way it's going away now. The horse is bolted, she's gone, and we're here. We need to think about how people absorb it with their whole brain thinking. So you need to make sure that you chuck that in and get that type of thing happening. You need to make sure that if you want it to remember who you are and be about you and help you the most, you absolutely need to prime it, okay? And add in these type of frameworks like this one. The limitations in future, make sure you're adapting to that, and think about your creative uses. So just remember that I can give you a copy of more in-depth slides and stuff like that if you want that, and the priming information. I would have had a QR up there, but I completely didn't get around to that. So just send me an email to jane@faqbusiness.com.au and just tell me that you would like to grab a copy. I'll put that in the chat. And yeah, if you've got any remaining questions, I know the time's up, so we'll probably be jumping off, but yeah, do feel free to flick them through. And what I'm just going to do is a last little thing. I'm just going to put a brand new chat into ChatGPT, which is basically saying, give me a summary of all the things we just put in the chat. And just when you put in a lot of information, you'll see a little technique I do is go hash, 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 and then you remind it what we want it to do. And now it's actually just going to give us a clear and structured summary of the ideas and boundaries that you put in. Ideas and opportunities for productivity and process improvements, product fit and business growth, coaching and communication use cases, cross-industry innovations and things, boundaries, risks, and ethical concerns. I'm going to chuck all of that in and give that to Rosie so that she can share that with you all. And thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jane, and thanks for everyone who attended today. We're coming up with our next forum next month. And as I said, I am open to hearing. I know a lot of you just connect with me on LinkedIn, so I'm excited about that. We love hearing these stories. Thank you for the tools and the tips. I'm going to go try that prompting framework later, and I will see you guys all next time. Bye-bye.